There are ways to watch it live, but it'll also be on our website later. Okay, our first writer. Her name is Pam Otto, and she is the manager of nature programs and interpretive services for the St. Charles Park District, where, with the aid of an outstanding staff, she oversees the district's award-winning environmental educational programs. She also gets to write about her experiences. Her weekly column, called Good Natured, appears in the King County Chronicle on Sundays. Pam, come on up, please.
Well, thank you, Kevin. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. And I hope you all intended to be here, didn't just accidentally blow in. As Kevin mentioned, I write a nature column for the King County Chronicle, and I have a couple of selections here. Hopefully will enlighten you about the natural world around you. The first one is called The Magnificent and Mobile Oil Beetle. Ironically, that's the only part of this I didn't write. I don't know if you submit to the papers ever, but they give you a headline. You don't get to write it yourselves. So forget that part. This is the rest of it. All right. On a walk the other day in the Hickory Knolls Natural Area, something big happened. I struck oil. Really. Well, to be more specific, the strike was really more of a stroke. And even though the experience was tremendously rewarding, I'm not really making any plans to retire off my riches. This oil wasn't black gold, and it wasn't Texas tea. It was the oily substance that's exuded by unique members of the Coleoptera, or beetle order, the Meloe, or oil beetles. I actually was on a hunt for jack-o'-lantern fungus, an amazing type of mushroom that glows in the dark, when I noticed a black insect it's about 2/3 the size of my pinky finger, rumbling through the same leaves that I was. I recognized the critter as something you're not supposed to touch, but at the time I couldn't remember exactly why. It was about a half hour later, back in the office, that I figured out what it was that I'd seen. And that's when the true richness of the discovery became apparent. Oil beetles are a part of a larger family called the Meloidae, or the blister beetles. That's where the don't touch part of my memory came in. When disturbed, these beetles, they secrete an oily substance. It's called cantharidin. It's highly toxic, and it's a chemical that can cause a severe skin reaction or a blister, which is where the blister beetle part of my memory started to come back. That, my friends, though, is only part of the story. The magnificence of the adult Meloe is surpassed quite mightily by the intricacies of its life cycle, specifically the intrigue it employs as it matures from egg to larva to pupa to adult. The female oil beetle, and I gotta apologize to, I know there's a lot of nature nerds out here, I didn't get specific, we're just gonna go with a genus. There's actually 22 different species of oil beetles present in the United States. I don't know which one I was watching, it was just really cool. But you know, they lay their eggs in the fall, and the eggs hatch in the spring. And the first stage of development, the instar of the oil beetle, is called a triungulin. It's got 3 little claws on each of its feet. It's more mobile at that stage, fresh out of the egg, than it will be in subsequent stages as a larva. These little guys, they come up out of the ground, and as a group, they crawl up to the top of a stalk of a flower or a blade of grass or some other sort of production, and that's where it really starts to get interesting. I'm going to draw an analogy. Picture yourself as a visitor in a new city. Upon arrival, you need to secure transportation that will get you to your hotel and to the meal you know is waiting for you there. Some of you may opt to hail a taxi, while others of you may decide to take public transportation, hoping that you'll grab one train and that will lead you to another train and that will get you to your destination. Now, even though these methods are quite different, they will each get you where you need to go. Well, it's the same for the oil beetle. And when they hatch from their eggs, excuse me, the eggs are laid at the base of plants, and they somehow need to hitch a ride from that plant to the burrows of certain species of solitary ground bees. These secure subterranean chambers excavated by female bees to raise their young will provide food and shelter for the beetle larvae's remaining stages of development. Alas, they are usually a considerable distance from where the little beetles find themselves situated. What are they going to do? Well, in some species, the solution is to exert every effort in order to secure a ride. The little beetles rear up and they flail their legs, just as though they're trying to hail a taxi. When they catch sight of a solitary ground bee, they wave and they wave until the bee comes in, and then the little larvae jump on and take a ride, just like they're hailing a taxi. The scientists aren't exactly sure how the larvae know that it's a ground bee that they're waving for. They think that it might be something to do with smell. There might be some visual cues, maybe wing beat patterns. And in fact, sometimes the beetles will actually hitch a ride on a fly or a wasp instead. We don't know what happens to them. But for the most part, they get to where they need to go, and they ride off to the land of milk and honey, or actually in their case, it's more like pollen and nectar. But anyway, they end up in the burrows where they need to be. Other species, however, they opt for mass transit. They climb up on the top of the flower or the leaf blade, and they form a clump that's roughly the size and the shape of a female ground bee. Their ticket to ride, so to speak, is emitted in the form of a chemical attractant, an alluring concoction that is very much like the pheromones of female ground bees. If all goes well, a male ground bee will show up. For our purposes, let's call him the A train. Unable to resist the charms of what he believes to be a potential mate, he lands on the flower and a load of oil bee larvae hop aboard. Now laden with larvae, the hoodwinked male bee continues his quest to find an actual female bee. While they're busy transacting their bee business, the beetle larvae disembark the male and make their way over to the female. We'll call her the bee train, upon whom they'll complete the next leg of their journey and arrive at their destination. You know, I could go on and on about the amazing complexities of oil beetles and how they mature inside the ground bee's chambers, how they feed on the pollen and the nectar that those female bees have gathered, how they descend or climb up out of the burrows and they mate and they start the cycle all over again. I could go on about how certain other beetle species will actually harvest that oil that these bees create, that cantharidin, and they use that to protect their own stashes of eggs. And I could tell you about how cantharidin is used to treat warts and how it's actually a key ingredient in Spanish fly. But, you know, those details add up to another story for another time. Instead, I'd like you to keep those ideas in mind and try to treat yourself instead to a hike at the Hickory Knolls Natural Area. You might find evidence of oil beetles and ground beetles, or you might come across something completely different. Either way, I guarantee you'll strike it rich. I have one other quick one. It's somewhat seasonal in nature. I wrote this, it was about a year ago. And it's a gift idea for those of you who are so inclined. Looking for the gift for that naturalist on your list? Hoping to make an impression with something handcrafted and from the heart? We got an idea for you. Combining some of the very best elements of nature itself, along with a dash of stylish individuality and 65% ethyl alcohol, this gift lets you say, I care about you and your interests, and I want to help you share them, even if at times they've caused people to recoil in horror and or run for the room screaming, Merry Christmas! Better still, it's the sort of homemade gift that anyone can make. No need for hard-to-source supplies, awkward glue guns, or tedious production steps. All you need is a vial or a jar, a tight-fitting lid, some hand sanitizer, and a dead bug. These simple materials brought together and heated ever so slightly are guaranteed to yield results so exquisite, so stunning, so Martha Stewart-esque that you'll wonder why you didn't think of it yourself. Or why, in the years since hand sanitizer has been invented, you never thought to leave the cap off your bottle just to see what might crawl inside. Step 1, procure a vial other than the one that the hand sanitizer currently resides. And here's a helpful hint. Think small. That quart-sized mayonnaise jar you've been saving for goodness knows how long is a little bit too large for this purpose. Unless, of course, you have an abundance of hand sanitizer and dead bugs. Step 2, wash, rinse, and dry the vial and make sure to wipe away any water droplets that are lurking inside. Step 3, fill the vial 2/3 full with hand sanitizer. Step 4, add your dead bugs. Use a probe or skewer and arrange them artfully. Note to entomologists. We recommend against the use of freshly killed bugs, since their bodily fluids can react with the hand sanitizer and cause the gel to dissolve. So all those bugs you've been meaning to scrape off your windowsill and do something with, that's what you want to use for this. They're nice and dry, they're ready to go. Step 5. You're going to place them all in a small, you're going to place a small saucepan on a stove burner and you're going to add about 1 inch of water. You're going to take your uncapped vial, stand it upright in the pan, and heat to a simmer. Cook it gently until all the bubbles in the hand sanitizer have risen and dissipated. Remove from heat and let cool. Top the vial off with more sanitizer and make sure you don't add any more bubbles in the process. Twist the cap on tightly, add a bow, which is optional, and ta-da! Your gift is complete. The concept of containing bugs in a viscous fluid, which is actually a way of preserving insects for use in classroom activities, it's not really new. In fact, several entomologists have likened the result to bugs that have been encased in amber, the fossilized tree resin that is formed sometimes millions of years ago. This most recent incarnation, using hand sanitizer as a protective agent, seems to have surfaced about 10 years ago. It was then that an entomologist working at a pest control firm encountered fruit flies inside an uncapped bottle of hand sanitizer. Apparently attracted by this fluid's sweet smell, the insects had crawled in and become trapped and preserved inside the container. Intrigued, the bug scientist began experimenting with different types of hand sanitizer and different types of insects. He found that there was little difference in clarity and preservative quality between the brands. He also concluded that in general, the process works better for adult insects than for juveniles. Other entomologists have since determined that dried insects work better than those that are still a little moist. This season, for at least part of your holiday gift-giving endeavors, why don't you try leaving the stores behind and instead take a stroll around the perimeter of your home, paying particular attention to overhangs where spider webs may hold some desiccated treasures. Basements, with their masses of dried millipedes and sow bugs, are good sources too, as are the sills of your interior and your exterior windows. Naturalist desks are probably the best places of all, but good luck stealing bugs away from us. Stock up on hand sanitizer, repurpose some bottles with some tight-fitting lids, and you'll be on your way to creating a charming new Christmas tradition. And there's no humbugs allowed. All right?